Wow, what an awesome demo. Hopefully you're inspired to make this world a better place. But what I'd like to do before we rush off and do that is explain how Todd was able to so easily store both unstructured and structured data and then process that data by taking advantage of the Oracle Autonomous Database. Now, that Oracle Autonomous Database is a new set of cloud services that are self-driving. That means that we'll automatically provision, manage, and monitor all of the infrastructure you need for that database, as well as the database itself. We'll make sure that it's perfectly safe by preventing any kind of external attack, as well as any malicious internal user that may be trying to get up to no good in your database. We also want to make sure that it's fully protected from any potential downtime. So we'll give you a highly available architecture as well as disaster recovery. Now, as Todd mentioned, he was able to use the Autonomous Database to store both his JSON documents, or his unstructured data, and his relational data, and then be able to join those data sets together. And regardless of what kind of language you want to use to interact with that database, you can do so with the Oracle Autonomous Database. So all the usual suspects, whether it's SQL, PL/SQL, if you want to use Python, Node.js, .NET, whatever it may be, you can use all of those languages with it. Now, you can see there on the slide behind me all the different capabilities the Oracle Autonomous Database has, but rather than talking you through them all, I thought it would be great if we could take an opportunity to show you the Autonomous Database in action. So the first thing when you are starting a new project is we need to provision that infrastructure and that Oracle database. And oftentimes this can be kind of the long edge of the project as we wait for all of that to be deployed. And what I'm going to show you now is that we can deploy an autonomous database in just 2 minutes. So we're going to start that by logging into the OCI console. I can take one of the cheat shortcuts there, but I'm going to go the long way through the hamburger menu and pick the autonomous database off the list. Once I'm there, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my region, so we're closer here to the Moscone. I'll go to the West region, and then I'm going to ask it to create an autonomous database for me. That opens a simple form, and I need to answer 5 or 6 short questions. First, it wants to know what name I want to give it, so I'm going to call it mine Swingbench ATP, because that's the workload I'm going to run against the database in just a minute. Next, once I've got the display name, it needs a database name. I'm going to use the same one. I'm not very imaginative. It's late after all in the afternoon. Next, I get to decide what type of workload I want. Am I going to be a data warehouse or transaction processing? I'm going to pick transaction processing, and I'm going to make sure that I get the serverless one where I don't worry about anything at all. Now I get to pick what resources I want for that database. You can have anywhere from 1 to 128 CPUs. I'm going to have 2. And the same with the storage, anywhere from 1 to 128 terabytes. Again, I'm going to just go with 1. I could enable auto-scaling at this point to let Oracle scale it for me, but I'm going to show you how to do it manually later, so let's not do that. Next, I need to give it an admin password. You see there in red, Oracle specifies a bunch of rules that your passwords must meet. Once my password meets those, though, it disappears. Last, I need to decide on the license. Am I going to bring my own license or pay for a license as part of the service? I work for Oracle, so I'm just going to bring mine. And with that, it will instantly begin to provision that autonomous database for me. And what it'll do is open a new console that shows me all the information and all the controls I have for that autonomous database, whether I want to stop it, start it, scale it up. You see there information about the decisions I made when I began to provision that system. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see information about backups. Your autonomous database will be automatically backed up on a nightly basis for you, and we'll keep 60 days worth of backups automatically for you. You can also take a manual backup, so if you're making changes to the application and you want to be able to fall back, you can. And with that, I have an autonomous database, so that's pretty neat. Now, once I've got that database, I want to be able to connect to it. And with the Oracle Autonomous Database, you're going to get 5 predefined services that are going to help automate your workload prioritization. Each service has a different priority, so my mission-critical workloads can come in on that highest priority service. In this case, that would be TP Urgent. But if I'm running also analytics, maybe I'm running some reporting on that same system, I can have those queries come in at a lower priority service so that they don't interfere with the online users. I can also have some of that batch reporting run in parallel if I wish by using the appropriate service for parallelism. Once I begin to develop my application, one of the things that I might want help with is actually tuning or optimizing the database for that particular workload. And with the Autonomous Database, I'm going to get automatic indexing built in. And what that is an expert system that's going to monitor the workload. So as I begin to develop the application, I begin to issue queries against that database, it's going to monitor that workload for me, determine if there are any missing indexes from my schema, and then it will verify that if those missing indexes were present, that they would actually improve the performance of that application. So they would actually be able to speed things up. Once it's identified those indexes and verified that they do improve performance, it'll automatically publish those indexes to the application, and it can begin to use them and take advantage, excuse me, of that faster access method. Again, all of this happens automatically. You don't need to do anything in order for this to take place. It will just do it for it. And as your application evolves, let's imagine at the beginning we were going after certain data that actually we decided wasn't that important, and we've changed the queries over time. Automatic indexing goes in and cleans up after itself. So if an index it has created is no longer necessary, then it will just remove that index as well, making sure that we don't just bloat your database for you. Now, one of the things we touched on when we were provisioning our autonomous database was scaling that system. And with the Oracle Autonomous Database, there's really no rules around the scaling. You're free to scale either the CPU, the storage, completely independent of one another. So there's no fixed shapes that you have to adhere to, because no 2 applications are really identical. Oftentimes, some need more storage, while others may need more CPU, or you can scale both together. You can also take advantage of our auto-scaling, where you want Oracle to automatically scale up the resources for the system based on your workload. So you define a base CPU count, and then as your workload increases and you begin to max out that CPU, auto-scaling will increase the number of processors on that system automatically for you up to 3x that base number. And once the workload goes down again, we'll automatically scale you back to that base, allowing you to truly only pay for the resources you need when you need them. So how does that scaling work? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a swing bench workload here. I'm going to connect 128 users to my autonomous database. They're processing JSON documents, so inserting, updating, and retrieving JSON documents. And the 4th column there is the one that you're interested in. That's going to show you the transactions per second on this workload. So all 128 users are connected. And if you look at my transaction rate, you'll realize it's quite erratic, which is an indication that perhaps I may have overloaded my autonomous database. Remember, I only have 2 CPUs on that database. And so if I look at the database monitor to see what's going on, I realize I'm completely CPU bound, and the scheduler is working overtime trying to schedule all of my processes. So let's give it a hand. I'm going to go back over to the OCI console, and I'm going to scale it up. And I'm going to change it from the original 2 CPUs to 8. So again, could have the option to do auto-scaling, but I won't. I'm going to continue to do it manually. And what you'll see there is instantly, it'll begin to provision those additional CPUs for me. Now, if we go back over to Swing Bench, we'll be able to see that change take place. Now, it'll take a couple of seconds, about 20 to 30 seconds, for those additional CPUs to come online. So if you look at the monitor, if you can see it closely there, there's a dotted green line that indicates the CPU count. There it goes. It jumps up from 2 to 8. So we now have all 8 CPUs available to the service. And if you look at the 4th column across in the background there, my transactions per second is much more consistent now. I'm getting a consistent 32,000 transactions a second on my workload now that I've scaled the system up, which makes it nice and easy for me. Once I've got my development environment up and running, I may want to share it. Oftentimes, we're asked to clone dev environments. Maybe it's so that people can begin testing the application, or simply to allow a colleague to participate in it. And with the Oracle Autonomous Database, we make it incredibly easy for you to be able to do that by allowing you to clone that autonomous database and get a point-in-time copy of that database for a colleague or for that test environment. When it comes to cloning, you get 2 options. You can do a full database clone, one where you get all of the data and all of the metadata in the existing autonomous database over in the copy, or we can just copy the metadata. So the copy would have the exact same schema, the same users, but none of the data from production in it. You get that choice. It's super easy to clone. I'm going to show you an example right now, because all I've got to do is answer 4 simple questions, and it will automatically provision that clone for me. So here we are back on my database with the 8 CPUs and the 1 terabyte worth of storage. I'm going to create a clone, and as I said, your first choice is, do you want a full clone or a metadata-only clone? I'm going to go with a full clone. I want to give the developers all of the data, not just the metadata. Once I've made that choice, I'm going to scroll down, and it's already given me a default name for my clone, but I'm going to call it something a little more unique. I'm going to call mine SwingBench 2. I need to give it a new database name because it is a separate database, so I'm going to call it SwingBench ATP 2. And then I get to decide, do I want to give that clone the same resources I had on my original environment or not? And this time, I'm not going to give it the same resources. I'm only going to give it 2 CPUs, but I am going to enable auto-scaling for it. I need to give the clone a new password. Same password rules apply. Once I've confirmed that password, again, I make a decision about licensing. I'm just going to bring my own. And straight away, I got brought into the clone UI now. So I'm inside the clone. You see the same general information about the clone as we had for the original database. And if I go out to the higher level view, you see there now I have 2 autonomous databases. The original autonomous database that we had, that's highly available, or sorry, currently available, and has 8 CPUs, and the clone that's currently provisioning with just 2 CPUs. If we go back in there, you'll see I have enabled auto-scaling for that clone, so it will actually be able to use all the way up to 6 CPUs. Oh, there it is. Now the clone is available. And just like my original database, that clone is a multi-model database, so it will be able to do structured, unstructured data, traditional transaction processing or analytics, as well as perhaps some of the newer generation type of applications, whether that's machine learning, as you saw Todd use, whether you're doing it as part of a big data environment, or perhaps as microservices. The autonomous databases make great databases for microservices. Regardless of what you're doing, you can do it with no risk and no compromise, because you're getting an autonomous database on the best platform for the Oracle database, which of course is Exadata, and you'll have all the scalability, availability, and security you're going to need for that project. Not only do you get all of that goodness with the Oracle Autonomous Database, but right out of the box with it, you're going to get a number of development tools to make it easier for you to get started with new projects. You're going to get SQL Developer Web, which has all the goodness of the Oracle SQL Developer desktop tool in a web browser. So I'm able to execute SQL, PL SQL through that. I'm able to build out my data models through their modeler capabilities. And I'm also able to monitor and manage that database through the SQL Developer Web. I'm also going to get an Apex environment. Apex is a web-based, low-code application development environment that it comes out of the box with your autonomous database. That way, all of your development can all happen within the browser and then have it instantly deploy against our autonomous database. We also allow you the ability to REST enable that autonomous database. So you can REST enable the schema and automatically generate REST endpoints for the tables and views within that schema, allowing your application to be much easier and simpler to deploy by simply making REST calls instead of having to write all of the SQL in the application. So let me quickly show you where you can find all of these tools. In the Service Console, you saw Todd go here earlier. Under the Development tab, there you see direct links to the Apex environment, the SQL Dev Web, the ML notebook that Todd used. I'm going to go into SQL Dev Web first. Here I'm going to log in using the admin user and the password I used when I created the autonomous database. Once I'm in, I'm there in the SQL workbook sheet where I can write any SQL. I also have a home tab, which gives me information on the other activities I've already done in this environment. Or I can go into Data Modeler, and you'll notice when I go into Data Modeler, there's a little tour there that I can take to help you navigate through it if you wish. Now, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to create a user so I can get going on a new Apex application. So I'm going to go ahead, create that user, and grant it all of the necessary privileges it's going to need to be able to build the app that I want. So you see there at the bottom of the screen, you can see the results of that script output. I've got my user, so I'm going to go back over now and go into Apex. Again, I'm going to log in initially as the admin user, and I'm going to create a new workspace for the user I just created, so for my Apex dev. Now, you see, I could have created the user here as part of that screen, but I wanted to show you SQL Dev Web. But now that I have the workspace, I can begin creating a new application, and I can create additional workspaces as well. And it's not just the database that Oracle has turned into an autonomous database. You would have heard yesterday from Mr. Ellison all about Oracle Autonomous Linux, which allows us to automate the entire OS lifecycle for you so that you can stay current, because we're going to automatically patch and tune and look after that operating system for you, allowing you to be able to develop much faster without requiring any downtime in order to allow IT to patch your environments, and then requiring you to double check after the patch that everything has come back up correctly. We'll do it all online, fully automatic for you, so that you're always in a reliable and secure environment, but you're not suffering any kind of downtime in order to create such an environment. With that, I want to thank you all for joining me, and I want to strongly encourage you to take advantage of the new free tier that we have. Remember, you're going to get 2 autonomous databases as part of that free tier. You also have, remember, a special 30-day free trial just for being an attendee here at Code One. And again, I urge you to take advantage of that. And with that, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of myself and all the other speakers here today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you very much.